Chair, we're ready to call roll whenever you are.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. Today's Tuesday, May the 4th. Time is now 6 o'clock. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the City of Georgetown Planning and Zoning Commission. At this time, will you please call the roll so we can establish who all is present?
Hi, good evening. Cherie Heinzman. Kayla McCord. Tim Haney.
Here.
Travis Perthews.
Here.
Jay Warren.
Ma'am, yes, ma'am.
Doug Noble. Chris Stanley. Jim Sawyer.
Here.
Mike Kylan. Barry Williams.
Here.
Okay, so I don't see Kayla, and I don't believe I heard her either.
Myrna,
Or Cherie.
Kayla just joined, and
Yes,
I don't
I'm here. I apologize.
Okay.
know if you caught Mr. Stanley, but he's here as well.
Sorry about that. I'm here.
Yes, so we are missing Cherie and Doug today. So we do have a quorum.
Okay, so we have 5 regular members. That's what I show.
Yes.
Okay. At this time, remind everyone the complete agenda for tonight's meeting and all the supporting information has been posted to the city's website. If you have questions, the planning department staff could help you locate those items. Tonight's meeting will have a regular agenda, consent agenda, and a legislative agenda. The regular agenda is item A, and then we have consent agenda item C through AB, and then I show we have one item on the legislative agenda, which is item AB. So at this time, Sophia, do you want to walk us through any items for tonight's meeting since it's virtual?
Yes, thank you for that opportunity. So just a couple of announcements. Please, when you're speaking, please announce your name so that we can capture exactly who is speaking at a certain time. Please stay muted until you are ready to speak. That's for commissioners as well as for attendees. Chair will open a public hearing, and at the time of opening the public hearing, you can either sign up to speak by raising your hand, your virtual hand here, or putting your name in the chat and letting us know that you are wanting to speak. Commissioners, if you have any technical difficulties, please reach out to us so that we can support you the best way we can. I'm on the meeting for this first part, and then I will need to go to another meeting that the planning department is hosting, but Andrea will be leading you here. Ethan is here as well, and Michael is here as well. We're all here to support you, and so you need to just chat us in the using the chat, and we will help you the best we can from afar. Chair, those are my opening remarks, but item A is updates and announcements. We move that up to the top of the agenda since we're a little double booked here in the planning department on public meetings. So if I may I just share a couple announcements at this point? Thank you. My biggest announcement right now is two-part, sort of a thank you, as well as just a notice in terms of some staffing changes here in the planning department. Andrea Davila, who you all know very well, she's been in the planning department for, Andrea, 3 years, almost 4 years, and with the city close to 8 years. Andrea has accepted a position of assistant director with the city of Cedar Park, and so unfortunately she will be departing this City of Georgetown team, and wanted to share that with you. It is quite a loss to our organization, not just the planning department. Andrea is just a top-notch professional. She brings and very, very good planning skills to our team. But I'd like to report that she is leaving this team better than when she received it. The current planning team is stronger because of Andrena's leadership that she has provided us. And so this will be her last P&Z meeting with you. I do want to share that we will be having a celebration of thanks to thank Andrena for the good work and good service she's provided Georgetown on Monday. We'll send out a formal invitation so you can see the time. It'll be Monday evening. And this will be a great opportunity for you all to share appreciation and for the work Andrena has done. It is with a bit of a heavy heart, but I want you to know that you have a strong planning department here. You have a strong current planning team and a strong administrative and long range that we are moving towards recruiting quickly and filling the job. We can never fill the shoes that Andrena has established for us, but it is, we will continue to move on and build on the good work that she's established here and continue to support you the best we can. So I'm here to answer any questions that you may have, but first and foremost, just wanted to share that with the commission.
Congratulations, Adrena.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We will miss you.
Yeah,
I
that's
will.
good. That's good for you. Not so good for us, but congratulations.
Thank you. No, I've definitely enjoyed my time here, and I've enjoyed working with all of you in the relationships that we have built, and I will still be around the area. So, and always here for you, no matter what you need. So thank you all.
Yeah, you've been here the whole time I've been on this board, so I've really, I have enjoyed your help. So congratulations. Okay, anything else, Sophia?
No, that's it. Chair, I'm going to turn it over to Andrena to lead this meeting.
Okay. Okay, at this time we have public wishing to address the board. Persons may add an item to the future board agenda by filling out a written request with staff no later than 1 week prior to a board meeting. The request must include the speaker's name and the specific topic to be addressed with sufficient information to inform the board and the public. At this time, though, we have no person signed up to speak and no items presented. So that'll take us to our consent agenda of routine and non-controversial items, along with items that don't require a public hearing. Tonight's agenda of consent items is item C through item AB. Double check that's correct. Yeah, C through AB. So at this time, are there any items that any of the commissioners need to abstain on? Okay, not hearing any. Are there any items that the commissioners would like to pull from the consent agenda? Okay, not hearing any. Are there any items that the public would like pulled from the consent agenda? Okay, so not hearing any there. Commissioners, at this time, the floor is open to a motion on the consent agenda.
This
I'll
is
make
just
the motion.
move to accept the consent agenda consisting of items C through A, B as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner McCord and a second by Commissioner Haney. Any discussion? If not, Myrna, you please call the roll on the consent agenda.
Kayla McCord,
Yes.
Tim Haney,
Yes.
Travis Berthews,
Yes.
Jay Warren,
Yes, ma'am.
Chris Stanley.
Yes.
So the motion carries 5-0. That brings us to the legislative agenda portion of tonight's meeting. We only have one item as of the time of posting. So that is item AC, which is a rezoning map amendment, and that is Mr. Harwell presenting this item.
Yes, sir. Let me get my screen set up here real quick. There we go. All right, yes. So tonight, the item we have for you is actually a continuation of a request the planning department received last fall that we've been working through in parts. So if you remember, earlier this year in January and February, y'all considered amendment number 1 to the Wolf Lakes planned unit development. That amendment mainly had to do with some items related to a roundabout within the development, and then some driveway spacing requirements on some internal streets. And we mentioned that we would have a part 2. Part 2 of this request has 2 parts to it. First part of the request is going to deal with some of those things you see there in the caption: the architectural design standards, our street character zone standards, parking lots and utility screening, and signage. And these are really to help the developers accommodate a certain user that requires a big box type format that was not planned for in the initial development. The other things we're going to be talking through tonight are related to the open space and amenities and the terms for modification in the PUD. And we'll get all into all that here in just a minute, but you'll see those 2 things come up. If you're not familiar with the property, you probably are, because we're talking tonight about the northwest corner of the intersection of Highway 29 and I-35. As you drive down Highway 29, all the vacant property on your left, on your right, if you're westbound, between I-35 and Wolf Ranch Parkway, is the Wolf Lakes Village development. To the north, they do border an existing ETJ neighborhood called River Hills. And of course, on the other 2 corners, if we move clockwise around the other 2 corners, you recognize the shopping center with HEB and Hobby Lobby, Tractor Supply. On the southeast corner, you have the recently opened Wolf Crossing development. Directly across the street, you have Wolf Ranch Town Center with Target. And then along that corridor, really from Wolf Ranch Parkway, really from Wolf Lakes Drive, you see there down to River Chase Boulevard, you have what people are generally referring to as formal Bluebonnet Plaza with the Academy, the recently opened 7-Eleven, and you have a few other miscellaneous uses coming there, car washes, restaurants, that kind of thing. And across the street along Wolf Ranch Parkway, you have what Hillwood refers to as their Hilltop neighborhood, that part of Wolf Ranch. On our future land use plan, this area is called out as a special area. You see all the other things around it, all the other commercial properties around it are called out to be a regional center where we're really promoting that auto-oriented commercial development that'll pull folks from not just all over the city, but even from all of our region, from Round Rock, Jarrell, Cedar Park, Leander, right? But this corner is different as a special area. These special areas are areas that are meant to be unique and special. So for example, our downtown is a special area. These are places where you are going to see more emphasis on the pedestrian experience. This is something where somebody is going to come and experience the place. You're really going to find a mix of uses. A lot of times here in Georgetown, we talk about mix of uses vertically, in a planned unit development or a master planned neighborhood. But here we also expect to find those uses mixed vertically, right? And you can find that in different formats. Whether that's retail on the first floor and living spaces above, or whether that is shopping streets that give way to apartment type neighborhoods, it can really depend. The property is already zoned. Yes, so the property is already zoned to the PUD that we're amending tonight. It has a base zoning of C3. Around it, you'll see you have that neighborhood to the north, you have the neighborhood as part of the Hillwood PUD to the west, and then similar commercial uses to what we'll talk about tonight on the south side of the highway. The original PUD was approved in 2018, and you can read that vision statement there on the screen. And what you really find is what the developers were looking to do here through the Wolf Lake Village PUD was create a special area. A lot of the guiding principles of the PUD and the vision statement really hit on providing those pedestrian areas, places where you can live, work, play, recreational areas, getting people out on the street, and really creating an urban village, if you will. You know, creating a nice little mixed-use development, which is something that we don't have terribly a lot of here in Georgetown. And you do see this reflected in their conceptual plan. In their conceptual plan, you can easily visualize the green spaces, pedestrian streets, on-street parking, features which would be critical to the feel of the PUD. The PUD is structured so that it divides the property up into 4 districts. You have a residential district along most of the northern part of the property, in that green color. You have what they refer to as the mixed-use district down there in the bottom right-hand corner, the office district in the bottom left-hand corner, and then in the very center of the development around the lakes themselves, you find the village district. And this is where they anticipated providing most of their entertainment and civic and recreational type uses. In the mixed-use district, which is what we'll primarily be talking about tonight, and it's anticipated they had a lot of retail and personal services uses, things you might find in your typical shopping center, and potentially even some high-density residential users there to complement those retail uses. Like I mentioned, it has a base zoning of general commercial, and with that, it modifies those base zoning standards quite a bit. Most of that modification is done in the use arrangements. So within certain districts of the PUD, whether that's the office district or the residential district, you see the PUD limiting different uses that don't line up with that. So for example, limiting residential uses in the office district, or limiting more retail type uses in the office district. But they do allow a certain amount of residential development within the PUD to facilitate that live, work, play environment that you need to make a development like this work. And the number of residential units is capped within each of those sub-districts. But overall in the PUD, there is some terms to phase in the residential development to ensure that both residential and commercial uses are being provided at the same time. So in the top line of the chart you see in the middle of the screen, you have the amount of commercial square footage that has to be provided for the next amount of residential units to be permitted. So for instance, until 150,000 square feet of commercial can be provided, you're maxed out at 700 units. Until you provide 250,000 square feet of commercial, you're maxed out at 950 units. There we go. The PUD, and so this screen will just give you an idea of how they expect the PUD to look and feel, and their streetscapes to feel. And really this complements the street network that they provide. As we discussed back in January and February, each planned street within the PUD is given a different cross section, and some of them are given what we call street character zones. These are meant to show not only how the street functions in terms of the amount of traffic it can carry and the through lanes of traffic, but also it also illustrates elements like street trees and on-street parking, which are critical to making a pedestrian environment. That's kind of a quick overview of the PUD, but everything about this PUD, which is pretty lengthy compared to other PUDs we have here in Georgetown, is organized into 2 chapters. So the bulk of the chapters, the bulk of the material you'll find about the actual development standards of the PUD are listed in chapters 3 through 12. And the bold chapters you see tonight are the chapters that are going to be amended by this PUD. So if you look through the red lines that were included in the agenda, and you want to follow along, flip straight to these chapters here. We already overviewed the zoning and land use framework and some of the transportation circulation matters because no changes are proposed there tonight. But As we start to talk through the changes, we'll talk through about what that section already says about the certain topic, and then we'll talk through what that proposed change is. So we'll start in chapter 4, development standards. This chapter covers 3 topics. It covers architectural design, which states how architects and designers should approach the design of buildings, the articulation requirements. That's something we see often in our straight UDC. That's a typical UDC requirement. And then it addresses those street character zones. The PUD specifies certain types of materials that need to be used and materials that cannot be used. And it also specifies different amounts of masonry and certain materials that are to be used depending on the district you're in the PUD. It also talks a lot about, depending on where you're located in the PUD, which district and which street character zone you're on, how that building should be designed. Should it be, what scale should it be designed? What kind of features should you be providing on the building to make it architecturally compatible with the rest of the development? Should your development have a back, in a mixed use development like this? It can be very difficult to build loading zones, that kind of thing. Because you really don't want to have, you want to have a 4-sided building, right? Nothing, it's very difficult to find things that have a specific rear to them. The articulation standards are important because they, while you can provide typically when we have these UDC standards, we're looking to make sure that a building is not just a flat face, right? That it has some depth and it's attractive to look at. Here in the PUD, that may not always be appropriate, especially when you're internal to the PUD, thinking about smaller buildings, pedestrian-oriented streets. And so the articulation requirements will only apply to that mixed-use district only, right there at the corner of 35 and 29. Last thing the PUD establishes are those street character zones. These are some of the streets, not all the streets within the PUD, are given a designation such as residential or other things that talk about how you should design your building to the street, how you should furnish the street, depending on what the intent is of that street. So for example, along El Lago and the streets in there, the intent is for it to be a residential, a shopping street where folks walk back and forth and shops front onto the street. So the street character zones talk about bringing your shops up to the front, providing outdoor seating areas and that kind of a thing. The PUD proposes to change these in several ways to accommodate that big box user that I mentioned earlier. If you think about designing a small urban village, you are typically thinking about smaller buildings. You're not necessarily planning on large loading zones. You're not necessarily planning on buildings being set back from the street like you need to do when you have a large building. And so these changes address that. Something that was not addressed in the PUD that needed to be before we considered this user was how to treat non-primary facades. So if you think about a typical big box store, you have one front that faces one direction, and then the rest of the building is left for other purposes or other uses. So what do we do there? We dress it up. We continue architectural elements around the building that were used on the primary facade. And we try to break up that facade and really bring it back down to a pedestrian scale so that somebody who's walking past the building does not feel like they're walking next to a giant blank wall. And then there may be instances where you need loading zones or you need space to screen mechanical equipment. And so we found that the best way to accomplish that within this PUD was to allow for a 15-foot landscape buffer between that secondary facade and the street there. The articulation requirements did not pose any issues, and so we did not make any changes there. But another space where we found that the street character zones, that the PUD lacked, was in the street character zones. And when considering a larger building that would be set back from the street, street character zones did not give us any direction on how to now treat that space between the building and the street to make sure that that experience a user has along the street is uninterrupted. So we did add some language to do that by using landscaping and different landscape type masonry walls. to help continue that experience there for a user. And then along the highway and gateway zone, which is I-35 and Highway 29, we asked the developer to provide some different type of architectural features that would help break up the massing of a building. If you can imagine a big box store may typically have a flat roof, and that would just go straight up, and you typically have an ornamental cornice across the top. What the features we're proposing here would do would be to help break up that vertical length of building you would see, and instead have maybe some sloped roofs, roof planes that would intersect with each other. Glazing, I have been very privileged to learn, is a fancy word for windows. And so how do we use glass in an attractive manner to create entrances and break up a facade? Where do we put in windows and colonnades and arcades across the front to help soften that large facade you may see facing towards the highway? And so we are very happy with that proposal. In Chapter 5, the PUD establishes different types of open space requirements for the PUD, not only to make sure that it is providing those recreational facilities that it tries to do, being one of those special areas, but then also, of course, making sure that folks who live here, these some 2,500 units, have green space that they can live everyday activities in. So some of these, like the public plaza or pocket parks, playgrounds, or the lakes, are required, and the PUD left some of these as optional, such as the amphitheater or the skate rink. As the developer has proceeded with engineering and actual site design, they have expressed the need for some flexibility in this trail alignment. So the green lines you see on the screen do represent kind of an extension of our already extended regional trail system. The site sits kind of in between our trailhead on the San Gabriel at Rivery Park and the new trailheads that are being developed as a part of Wolf Ranch south of 29. So it's really, and then it connects to the trail system being developed as part of the Hillwood neighborhood that runs along Wolf Ranch Parkway. So it's very poised to be a great starting place for somebody wanting to be in our trail system. But just like this plane is conceptual, so is the trail alignment conceptual. So the proposed change would say that you don't have to stick to this specific alignment so long as you're providing the same amount of trail for folks to enjoy. The next section we're proposing some changes in is Chapter 7 regarding parking. So the PUD does set some minimum parking standards for different uses, but what it mainly focuses on is the design of that parking. What kind of materials are used? Are you using accented materials to create a crosswalk, or are you just, painting your typical white stripes, to get people across the street? Being that this PUD has a significant amount of density, it is very possible that it will have quite a bit of structured parking. So the PUD also establishes some design criteria for how those parking garages should look and be placed, and if they face a public street, how do they interface with that street? The changes we're proposing today are to just add colored concrete to the list of materials there. It already talks about brick and stone and some other types of pavers. But then we are also adding a tree component to the screening requirements for parking lots in the highway gateway zone along I-35 and University. So if you can think back to previous conversations we've had about parking screening, you know that we typically only require the screening shrubs along the base that would stop headlights and prevent you from seeing 3 to 4 feet above the ground of the cars. What the developers are agreeing to here is to also provide some trees within there to provide just another layer of screening that could potentially block further view from the highway. The PUD does address utilities. It goes as far as prescribing what kind of Easement requirements, there would be along perimeter streets and utility alignments within the PUD. Most of your utilities here will be in the right of way rather than adjacent to the right of way like we're used to seeing around town. And it also addresses the way that some mechanical equipment like transformer boxes should be screened. If you've noticed around town, you typically see transformer boxes screened from public right of way and adjacent properties. You may see that used with shrubs or sometimes masonry walls. What we did here is just clarify that they should also be screened from public spaces internal to the development, not just around the perimeter. And then if it's not possible to screen a utility box, that some type of camouflage or other careful consideration to hide the box should be considered. Right. The PUD also extensively considers signage. So the PUD provides examples of the signs that will be used, like the ones you see here. The one you see at the bottom of the screen is actually the example of what will be provided at Wolf Lakes Drive and University Avenue, right there by Raising Cane's. And it specifies the number of signs that they'll be allowed. So this really provides a unified approach to signage around the site, and that you may not get otherwise if this was all going to be split up and developed individually. Important to note is that the PUD provided for 4 low-profile monument signs, but if you go to the concept plan here, you will see that only 3 of those signs were originally placed in the document. One of the things the developer is requesting tonight is that we place that 4th low-profile monument sign along University Avenue to be used by a future user, and then increase that total number of low-profile monument signs to give them 5, which would give them still 1 more to play with. The developer expects that they could use that along I-35 with some of the users they expect to have there, which would be their longest street frontage as well. All right. The last section of the PUD we're going to talk about tonight is the modifications and administration section of the PUD. A lot of times you'll hear us talk about administrative exceptions for a development that does not have a special zoning type like a PUD. There are things we can do administratively to help work around potential issues with sites or natural features, topography, space constraints at the staff level without having to come ask y'all for a zoning variance request, excuse me. This PUD also established a process like that. And it was specific, but also it expanded the ability beyond what we could typically consider with an administrative exception to include those 3 things you see on the screen: the rerouting or alignment of streets, flexibility for elements shown on the concept plan, and then it provided for a lot of flexibility in phasing. The proposed amendment clarifies what a minor modification is. As the developer has continued with site planning, engineering, and identifying potential users, things like moving the roundabout that moved in February have come up and have not been able to fit under that minor modification definition, and so thus had to come back to this commission and the city council to be modified. So this would clarify what a minor modification is. What we're adding here is adjustment to district boundaries. So, you know, if we figure out that for example, the office district needs to be slightly larger, you know, up to 20% of the total PUD, we can shift those boundaries around and add and take there. Ingress and egress locations on perimeter streets can be shifted slightly around. Deviations up to 10% from any numerical standard. For example, if you have a 25-foot setback, we can reduce you by 2.5 feet as something we do very standard as an administrative exception all the time. And then relocation of required elements, so long as you're not removing the So for example, this last bullet point would have addressed our need to come back to you guys for an amendment to move the roundabout, right? We would not have been eliminating the element. We would just have been moving the roundabout from one street to another. The PUD also proposes some new terms for us to consider regarding the potential need to remove streets in the future. I've mentioned tonight that a lot of the changes we've worked on, whether it was the roundabout or the streets or the architectural standards we're changing tonight, have been done as the development has moved from that conceptual phase into that actual site planning and engineering phase. It's very possible that as the developer continues identifying users for the site and continues to file development applications with us, that they may have to remove one of those streets from that concept plan that we showed you there. So the PUD proposes kind of 3 terms for how and when that may be appropriate that the planning director could consider when a request to remove a street is made. First one is that the removal of the street has to be the last option. Was there any way that we could have just reduced the width of the street or the classification of the street to make it work? Was there any way we could have rerouted the street, shifted it 100 feet to the south or something? The PUD does allow the option to make streets public or private. So, if going from a public street to a private street would have solved the issue, is that an option that we've exhausted? It also cannot be one of the streets named there in the second bullet point. These streets are critical for either traffic circulation within the PUD or through across the PUD. Then lastly, there are 4 things that the planning director can request when considering this request for an elimination, to eliminate a street. The applicant will need to explain and really provide evidence of the unique conditions that are causing them to want to remove the street and that none of those other options are feasible. They'll need to provide an explanation of how they feel removing the planned street meets those vision and guiding principles we reviewed earlier. They will need to provide an explanation of how they can still accommodate the design standards of the street character zone and their sub-district in terms of architectural standards without the street. And they'll need to provide an engineered study of how removing the street may impact the traffic that flows through the other intersections on the site. We reviewed the request against our 5 criteria for rezoning and of course our 6 criteria for a PUD. And in general, we found that it complied with all of the criteria. Like I've been talking about, this site is the definition of a special area. And we do not feel like these amendments take away from any of that character or quality. We're not modifying land use standards. We are not modifying really modifying open space recreational standards. So we feel it's compliant there. We do feel that it promotes the health, safety, and welfare. We are accommodating for, we are writing standards for an anticipated user on the site to make sure that it is compatible with the other users nearby it and with the overall development scheme. And that is certainly orderly development. As far as compatibility with present zoning goes, we are not substantially changing our land use plan or our conceptual idea of the site. And so we found that it complied there. And then of course, just as the property was suitable for the original PUD, we find that it is still suitable for the PUD here today. The PUD does not make any changes to its intended housing types, amount, or style of housing. It does not, again, propose any changes to permitted uses or really intended users. It is, of course, providing for an orderly and creative arrangement of land uses, right? We're talking about most of our architectural design criteria, proposals are talking about the way uses interact with each other and the street. We're talking about the way that the site reflects onto University Avenue and I-35. Tonight, the proposals before you are not altering anything about the transportation plan within the PUD, so we comply there. We are altering the standards for the trail. However, we're still receiving the same amount of trail. And so we can check the recreational box off. Then consideration of building envelopes to take advantage of the environment. We very much so feel that the standards we've worked out regarding secondary facades and the Highway Gateway Street character zone and the way that buildings will face there and be treated are very compliant with this criteria. And then lastly, of course, the development will be phased and staged in a manner that is feasible. All right. We did notify 94 property owners and post notice in the newspaper like we normally do. And then, of course, 14 signs on the property. And we did receive 2 comments in favor. Those comments were in favor. They did express some general concerns, but overall, very clear that they were in favor. So that concludes my presentation, Mr. Chairman. I, of course, am available for questions. We have our engineering staff here if you have questions of them as well. The applicant has a presentation for you, as well as their intended user for one of the sites.
Okay, thanks, Ethan. Okay, commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Harwell or any of the other staff? I have kind of a general question. I mean, I've looked through this, and there's obviously this is a large project. There's a lot of moving parts, and so trying to track through changes is sometimes difficult. But my general understanding is these changes are something that the applicant has worked with staff to arrive at. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We have very much so been deliberating with the applicant to really come to what we feel is the best proposal.
So it's more of a group project versus them presenting something and it being up for review.
Yes, sir. I think that's a good way to pose it.
Okay. Does anybody else have questions for staff on this item?
This is Kayla McCord. Just to make sure I understand, Mr. Harwell, the 4 streets that are not eligible for elimination, still theoretically, they could be rerouted if that's justified under the other criteria. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. If they need to be rerouted to wrap around a new building or site feature, that could certainly be possible. They begin and end at A and B, but the space between is flexible.
Okay. And my only other question, should the lakes be larger than anticipated under the conceptual plan, and it's my understanding that they could be, that the trail, well, okay, I think we're covered on that because there's still a minimal amount of trail to be considered and it will remain within that. I think I answered my own question. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, Ethan, you said the applicant has a presentation.
Yes, sir. They have a presentation, and they also have one of their development partners, intended users for the site, here to give a short presentation as well.
Okay, well, the applicant's ready. We can go ahead and hear from them first.
Yeah, no.
There she is.
Okay, but now we need to get on the video.
There you are. Oh, sorry. Hang on.
Iva, are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
We're trying to get on. All right. There we go. Here we are. Yes, thank you very much, Ethan, for your excellent presentation, and good evening, Chairman and Planning and Zoning Commission members. My name is Iva Wolf McLaughlin. I'm the president of Wolf Lakes LP, the owner of Wolf Lakes Village property. And thank you for your time this evening. I just want to say that our original intent and continued strong desire for this development is to create a win-win outcome for Wolf Lakes Village and the city of Georgetown. So the question is, why are we doing a PUD amendment? And we're doing the PUD amendment because after many years of planning, we're now ready to implement the concept plan and activate the site. In order to activate the site, we need to make a few minor modifications to the PUD. And I just want to share with you what we are doing currently to activate the site. We're very proud that Ascension Seton Medical will be on our site. Last year, we sold 12 acres to Ascension Seton. And Ascension Seton is one of the leading healthcare systems in the country. They are working currently with the city to finalize the first phase of their site development plan to construct 40,000 square feet of medical office building and a surgical center. We believe Ascension Seton will be a valuable asset to the city of Georgetown. And then next we have 14 acres along Wolf Ranch Parkway under contract to Hines. Hines is the largest private developer in the world, and they are planning a best-in-class multifamily development with exceptional architectural features. And we're scheduled to close blinds at the end of this month. I'm getting a message that my connection's unstable. Are you able to hear me? Okay. So 2 projects I've mentioned, Seton Medical and Hines, as shown on this new concept master plan. And we recently finalized a contract with Novak Brothers for an upscale multifamily and townhome development on 12 acres. That is not labeled on this concept plan that Ethan is showing you, but it's a 12-acre site along Wolf Ranch Parkway on the north side of the Hines tract. And as most of you know, we are under contract with HEB for a 15-acre site as shown on this concept plan. And also, I think most of you know that HEB is one of the best grocers in the country. We believe HEB will be the catalyst to launch Wolf Lakes Village and enable us to recruit other high-quality commercial users and create this one-of-a-kind destination location originally envisioned in our PUD. We always had a grocery store planned on this site, and we're very proud that HEB will be the grocer for Wolf Lakes Village. This month, we are on schedule under our contract with Ascension Seton to begin construction of major infrastructure, which will include the concrete streets, underground utilities, the wastewater line, water lines, water quality detention lakes, landscaping, the beautiful streetscapes, and special architectural features, and including monumentation and signage. Now, Ethan is showing this rendering, which is the new roundabout that we did get the first amendment to relocate because we were under a time schedule to comply with Ascension Seton. And on this rendering, let's see, we jumped a little bit out of order, Ethan, but anyway, this rendering shows the roundabout in the center of the site with a tall Roman-style colonnades at all 4 corners and a beautiful high fountain in the middle surrounded by Italian cypress. But back to the master plan, Ethan, if you could put that back on the screen. Again, we're in the process of constructing the roads, and for the Hines project, Seton and HEB and Novak. So during this first phase of the infrastructure, starting this month, we will be constructing Legacy Crossing. I don't know if you're able to show that with a cursor, Ethan, where Legacy Crossing right there, perfect. We will be constructing Legacy Crossing from Wolf Ranch Parkway until it reaches Wolf Lakes Drive. We will also be constructing Wolf Lakes Drive from Legacy Crossing down to Memorial, right there, right? And then we'll also be constructing Bella Lago, which is north of the HEB site, and it will go from Wolf Lakes Drive all the way over to the I-35 frontage road. And one thing I want to emphasize is that all of these new roads, these new interior roads, will facilitate circulation through the site and reduce traffic on the perimeter roads. So this is very important that we will be creating the extension of Wolf Lakes Drive, Legacy Crossing, and Bella Lago that will provide for the circulation in the site for people to reach the HEB off of Wolf Ranch Parkway or off of the I-35 frontage road or off of Wolf Lakes Drive. We'll also be building the regional water quality and detention lakes. The main lakes in the heart of the village will enable us to create valuable commercial pad sites surrounding the lake and special amenities. We also have a rendering Ethan can show, which is a typical streetscape. This is a typical streetscape on Bella Lago Drive, which is north of the HEB site, and it shows that it will have outdoor dining, pedestrian-friendly walkways, and European-themed landscaped architecture. We have a second slide, Ethan. Yes. So both of these are we've created to give you a visual of the look of the streetscape on Bella Lago Drive, which will be north of the HEB site. We just want to re-emphasize that our vision for Wolf Lakes Village hasn't changed, and we are resolute in our commitment to implement our original vision with HEB and with all the projects on our site. We have very high standards in this existing PUD, and we have our own 87-page set of architectural design guidelines. Just one example is our PUD requires landscaping in the gateway buffers to have double the number of UDC required plants and shrubs. And we're holding HEB to these high standards in our own design guidelines. And to their credit, HEB is completely on board to meet those standards and make this store one of the best, most beautiful stores in the state of Texas. We're not lowering our standards to have HEB on the site. HEB is raising their standards to ours. And the PUD amendment in no way changes our vision. It is simply an additional pathway to that vision. And for me and my husband, Donald, who's here, this project is not just a project. It's an opportunity to do something extraordinary and create a wonderful, magical place with a lasting legacy for the city of Georgetown. And we're committed to do what it takes to make that happen. And we ask for your support of the PUD amendment, which will enable us to implement this vision. We also have Jared O'Brien here on this. He's present, and he is the Director of Real Estate for HEB. He's here to explain the reasons for the relocation of the HEB to Wolf Lakes and to further describe the remarkable features of the new flagship HEB store, which will better serve all the citizens of Georgetown. We also have our engineer, Brian Birdwell, present, and we're happy to answer questions now or after the presentation from Jared O'Brien. And Ethan, it might be helpful to move back to the new master concept plan before, if anybody has any questions, and then Jared is ready, I see, to give his presentation. Chairman, would anybody like to ask questions now or wait for
Yes.
Jared?
So, sorry, I was on mute there. Yeah, I was gonna say, before he gets started, let's see if anybody else has questions. If not, then we can move on and hear from HEB. Okay, it doesn't sound like we have any questions for you at the moment, so I don't see where, let's see. Okay, Mr. O'Brien, if you give us your name, address, and then,
Let's see
get
one.
started.
Absolutely. So good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Jared O'Brien. Address is 1911 Madison Avenue, Austin, Texas, 78757. As Ava mentioned, I'm the Director of Real Estate for HEB in the Central Texas area, and I've been working closely with Iva and the Wolf Lakes team on this project for replacement HEB store. So I figured we could spend just a few minutes talking more specifically about what these PUD amendments bring to the city with respect to HEB specifically. So Ethan, if you want to move forward a slide. You guys have already seen it on IVA's master plan. This is essentially the land area we're talking about for the HEB store. So we're very proud and excited about what our proposed store will bring to the city of Georgetown and the community, and we hope you will be too. We're also proud to be a part of this incredible and unique development that Iva and her team are creating. And HEB has contemplated for some time replacing the existing store that you can see on the right there on the aerial at 35 and University. We've considered replacing it for some time and had always contemplated replacing the store with a new store directly behind the existing. There are a variety of physical and developmental constraints that make that extremely difficult, if not impossible. And so some time ago, we began the conversation with Iva on participation in the Wolf Lakes Village development. And so we're here today to seek your blessing for the PUD amendments that will allow HEB to replace this existing obsolete store with a wonderful new store, as Iva has described, on the Wolf Lakes Village. And we can take a look at what that store looks like. Can we do the next slide, Ethan? So here's more or less the site plan of what we're looking at for the new store. So along the left-hand side runs Wolf Lakes Drive, and along the front of the store, which is sort of the bottom right side of the screen, runs University Avenue. So we're very proud of the design our team has created for our proposed new store as part of this unique development. The store incorporates the latest thinking that HEB has to offer in both store design and product assortment. And so relative to what customers get today in the existing store at I-35 and University, customers will essentially get double the sales floor area, which allows for things like an expanded produce assortment with additional cut fruit, prepared salads, a variety of other fresh produce options not available in the existing store. An expanded prepared meal section, which we found in many stores our customers really appreciate and enjoy. Meat and fish markets, a cheese shop, expanded beer and wine assortment, a larger pharmacy and expanded drugstore, and even a barbecue restaurant, which we'll see in the renderings here shortly. And it's of note, Texas, our True Texas barbecue chain, which we have in a number of stores, was voted the best barbecue chain in Texas by Texas Monthly. So we consider that quite the accolade and are very proud of that. And we'll bring that in our proposed new store to Georgetown. So, next slide, please, Ethan. Here's a rendering of the front elevation. So of note, this store will be unique among HEB stores and designed specifically for the site. You know, Iva described the vision and the guiding statement of the Wolf Lakes Village project. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Iva described the vision and the guiding statement of the Wolf Lakes project, and we're doing our best to live into the spirit of that development. And so we've designed our proposed new store with these Mediterranean-inspired themes, design elements, and materials. So using materials like natural stone, brick, and stucco as the facing materials. You can see the vaulted entry towers here with the barrel tile roofs reminiscent of Mediterranean architecture. Articulations appropriate to the building's mass and design theme. And then we've got smaller elements incorporated as well, like windows with awnings, decorative sconces, decorative railings. And the barbecue restaurant, as you can see on the left side, we're featuring both an upstairs balcony for an outdoor seating area and a downstairs sidewalk seating area at the barbecue restaurant, again, to bring in the sort of the pedestrian aspect of the larger development. So, next slide, please, Ethan. Here's another view of the store, this one from University Avenue. The point here is to illustrate kind of the large landscape buffers, and I've talked a bit about the landscaping requirements for the development, but this illustrates the large landscape buffers along University Avenue with the native trees and the shrubs that will screen the parking area and complement the store. You can see a landscaped pedestrian pathway through the parking area. And our objective here is to make this gateway intersection and our participation in it something for the community to really be proud of. Next slide, please. This is the view of the store from the side, from the left side, from Wolf Lakes Drive. So again, you can see the large landscape buffers with the native trees and shrubs. Again, an inviting pedestrian experience that we're intending to integrate with the larger pedestrian experience of the Wolf Lakes Village. You can see in this view the lower level seating area at the barbecue restaurant. And again, even on the side of the store, the use of natural stone, brick, stucco, articulations, and other design elements that are complementary to the architectural vision of the total development. Next slide, please. This is the view from the traffic circle. I've described how important the traffic circle was as an entry feature to the development. And so we felt it very important to respect that feature. We're trying to be very thoughtful about how we screen our service areas with materials and forms that are consistent with the store design and the vision of the larger development. So as you can see here, we're using things like masonry walls, landscaping with native trees and shrubs, and even the materials and design of this portion of the store that are visible from the traffic circle are similar to the front and side of the store in that they are more attentively designed and less of a utilitarian design that you might expect in service areas in typical stores. Next slide, please. And finally, the back of the store. So the back of the store will back up to Bella Lago, which is an important street in the development. So as you can see, we're intending to carry the landscape buffer across the back of the store, but again, to use similar architectural materials and techniques in the back of the store as on the front and sides. And the point is here is the back of the store is not an afterthought for us in this development. We try to be very careful and thoughtful in designing a four-sided store, again, appropriate for the development. So in essence, we're here to ask your support for the PUD amendments requested so that we can bring this wonderful store to life for the community of Georgetown and our customers, and serve them in the best way we possibly can.
Okay, thank you, Mr. O'Brien. We appreciate you taking time to be here with us this evening. Commissioners, do you have any questions for either of the applicants who gave presentations tonight? Okay, not hearing any. We could open the public hearing on this item. I don't believe we have anyone from the public signed up to speak on this item.
No, sir, I don't see any hands that have been raised or anybody that has stated as such either in the chat or the Q&A box.
Okay. In that case, we can close the public hearing. And at this time, the floor is open to a motion.
This is Commissioner Stanley. I move we approve the motion.
This is Jay. I second.
So that was that Commissioner Stanley? Did you make the motion?
Yes.
And then Commissioner Warren second. Okay. Any discussion on this item? Okay, we don't have any items or any topics to discuss in relation to this item. Myrna, can you please call the roll?
Kayla McCord,
With an appreciation for those additional presentations, yes.
Tim Haney,
Yes.
Travis Britthews,
Yes.
Jay Warren,
Ma'am, yes, ma'am.
Chris Stanley.
Yes.
Okay, so motion to recommend approval on item AC carries 5 votes to 0. So that takes us, well, let's see. So we already, Adriana, we already covered.
There are no more updates and announcements from staff, sir.
And we covered that at the beginning. So we can have a motion to adjourn.
Stanley, so moved.
Okay. Commissioner Stanley, motion to adjourn. I'll second it. Myrna, can you please call the roll?
Kayla McCord,
I'm sorry, yes.
Tim Haney,
Yes.
Travis Perthuis,
Yes.
Jay Warren,
Yes, ma'am.
Chris Stanley.
Yes.
Okay. The motion to adjourn carries 5-0. So it is 7:06 and we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your time this evening.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you, guys.